Welcome to our week 2 class. How's everybody doing? Thanks for being here on time. I appreciate that very much. Well, I'm working on the grading and expect to have that back to you shortly. Sometimes I do it on Sunday, but not this weekend. Today I've been at work, so after class tonight I intend to work on grading. So does anybody have any questions about anything at this point? No? Okay, well, I'll turn off my video so we don't have the problem there. Share my screen. Can you tell me if you see the week 2 overview? Okay. Now, last week, if you recall, we looked at the objectives for the week and discovered that the project requirements from last week were coincided with the certification of the Adobe certifications. Does everybody recall how we went and looked at that? Let me, if you don't remember doing that, I can do it again, because this week it's the same type of thing in that we have the second section of requirements from that certification, the Adobe certification. So we can go look at Adobe certification objectives and search for that. Certificate programs. And if you recall, they have 6 different certifications right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And this is the one we're focusing on as far as requirements go. And we'll get about halfway through the requirements for this one. And you can see this is Photoshop, Flash. These are other courses would prepare you for these other certifications. Photoshop, Flash, Adobe Illustrator, PR, can't remember. Premiere. Okay, well, I don't even think we teach the Premiere, the one here. And then InDesign. So let's click on this here and we'll review from last week the setting project requirements right here. Those are the ones that we focused on last week. Now, this week, it's this section here, the Domain 2.0, Planning, Site Design, and Page Layout. Now, we got a little glimpse last week on site design and page layout. I haven't yet looked at everybody's submissions, but I'm interested to know if you were to describe your site, your page layout in general terms, how would you describe it? Now, here's what I mean. If you recall, last week we looked at Dreamweaver and we saw that there were some templates that were built in to Dreamweaver. And if you'd like, I can review that, but let's go with your memory for right now. And those templates were general templates that would be automatically generated, but they were described using general terms. Now, here's what I mean. One of the templates was a single column or one column fixed, meaning the width was fixed to a certain number of pixels. Another one was one column and it was liquid, meaning it wasn't a fixed width, but it actually would expand and contract based upon the size of your browser window. Another one was single column header and footer. I think there was one, a single column or one column header only, and another one was one column header and footer. Do you remember these general classifications of designs? Does everybody remember that, where we reviewed those general types? Okay, so you're getting a remember. If you don't remember, just put a question mark, and then I'll back up a little bit. So, for those of you who do remember, how would you describe the general design of your page layout thus far? What's your general design, using terminology kind of like I just did? If you don't know the question I'm asking, just put a question mark, and that way I'll back up. Okay, so Christopher said single column, liquid header and footer. Okay. So there's a header, and then there's a footer in your design, and it's a single column. So there's no left side navigation, right side content. There's not two columns, there's not three columns. It's just a single column with a liquid, or yeah, the column is liquid, and then there's an additional header and footer, which are also obviously liquid. Great answer. I understand exactly what you're talking about. Who else can describe, in general terms, their design? Anyone? Their page layout. I can't tell if anybody's typing. Okay, great, Ryan. Okay, we'll talk with you in a second, Ryan. Let's look at what Sarah just replied. Two column liquid, meaning left to right, automatic, and a header and a footer, I think she says. So I don't have your design right here to be able to confirm one way or the other. Did you have navigation across the top? You probably had a logo across the upper corner, probably upper left, or and then navigation links across the, not necessarily the top, but maybe just at the bottom of the header. And then you may have had some other fixed content down in the footer area. Am I right, Sarah? If you did have some fixed content that would be showing up on every page in the footer, then yes, that would be your design. So your page template, fixed on the footer and header. Okay, when you say fixed, you did say a liquid column. So yeah, okay. Yeah, the constant content. Okay, great. Okay. All right, I understand. Now, Ryan and Scotty, let me review for you what we were talking about, what this is. And for those of you who are watching recording, this will be a review for you too. Oops, I accidentally ran CS6. I meant to run CC 2015. So these are general ways to talk about designs. All right, here we bring up CC 2015 here. And I'm going to say new HTML document. And here I have, I can either start from scratch, which would be this, or I can click on starter templates or site templates. So let's see. No, Scotty, you didn't need to do Dreamweaver. No, I'm only doing this to educate you. You're all good. It's all good. Your design actually wasn't supposed to be done and was not supposed to be done in Dreamweaver. So this is just a way to communicate and be on the same page regarding the various options that can come up when you are designing a website. Now, I normally see the layout right here. And it's right here, the set of layouts. And this might be, boy, I'm just a little bit caught off guard here because I'm expecting all of them to show up right there. So let me back out just a little bit because I'm going to back out because I would normally see the list right there and with previews, so layout and list. So forgive me for a second here, but I'm going to go back to 2014 just because I'm quite sure that, okay, this is Dreamweaver 2014. Oh, and let me try this, file new. See, here is what I was talking about. I'm expecting to see all of them here. There's a possibility that my moving around files has changed the ones that are on my drive. So let me back out even one more version. I went from 2015 to 2014, and now I'm at 20 CS6. So this is what I was going for right here, this list. And I'm going to have to make sure that my 2014 and 2015 are installed correctly, because this is the full list of what I went over last week. And I thought I was in 2015, but no worries. My goal here is to just talk generally about these different layouts. These are general descriptions of layouts and designs over here. So this is for Ryan and Scotty. Over here is a preview of the web page. Now, if there's a lock here, what that means is the design of your website is locked, meaning if you make the browser window bigger, the content would stay in that area. Now, let me show you what I'm talking about. We're just talking about the general design here. Let me see if I can, well, actually, see, there's an example right there. This is a web page, and as you can see, the content from this line to this line appears to be fixed. So the way you can tell for sure is you can take your browser window corner and move it. See how I'm moving that? Notice how that content area stays centered, number one, but it stays the exact same width, depending, no matter how large or small I am expanding or decreasing the window. What that means is the content underneath is locked. Its width is locked. Therefore, the design of at least this portion here would be considered locked. See that lock right there? That means your content area is locked. And no matter how large or small, it will stay the same. Let me just ask you, Ryan and Scotty, are you with me so far? Scotty may have stepped away. All right, so you see that is locked. That's why we have that, so that design is locked. Now, let's go one step further and see, is there a header at the top of this web page that appears to be a constant header from one page to the next? So what would you say? Oh yeah, Scotty, see, here's the problem, Scotty. I think that 2014 and 2015 are not giving those, but that's okay. We're not going to use those. I've been here in this class, we're actually going to start working from scratch rather than using those built-in templates. I just am using those as models for discussion purposes. So you probably have 2014 or 2015, am I right? And you probably saw exactly what I saw just a minute ago, which is they just aren't all there. I really like them because, 2015, okay. I really like them because it's a great way to have the conversation about page design. I really like that, just to talk about them. And so back to this one here. This design scrolls vertically, and it's a locked width, and then there's a header across the top. And let's scroll down the bottom, and yep, there's a footer too. This is the footer area. And you know it's a footer when it shows up on every page. And you know it's a header if it shows up on every page. Okay, is everybody with me? Header, fixed body or locked body, and footer. Everybody with me on that? All right, so here, this design doesn't describe what we're talking about. What about this one? Does this design, this is the general one column fixed, centered, header, and footer. Would you say that this describes the design of that page that we were on? It's fixed, it's centered, it's got a header and a footer. Okay, good. That's right. That's exactly how this design, that's exactly the general design. We're just talking generally. This is a one column fixed, centered, header and footer design. And that's what you see here. So Ryan and Scotty, how are you doing so far? Okay. Now, given this information, okay, awesome. All right, so Scotty, are you saying that this was your design? So now back to the original question. Using this as a model or as a basis, what was your design? What is your page layout design? I think Scotty said that you chose a one column fixed, which is centered, which has header and footer. How about you, Ryan? Do you recall? Would you be able to describe what yours was? One column fixed, centered with only header. Okay, that's fine. Now let's talk about Liquid just for a moment. I'm going to go to yahoo.com and let's see how that design responds. So you see that there's a header. Would you say that this is a locked width? You see how it dynamically expands. See, it's kind of like a breathing. It like breathes. When you get it bigger, it breathes wider. And then when it gets smaller, I think that's going to contract all that design. See that? And then eventually it stops. It won't go any smaller. And then you keep on going. And it just doesn't. In fact, there it stops and won't let you make it any smaller in the design. That's pretty interesting. It stops right there. I can't go anymore. Yeah, Ryan sees that too. Okay, so that's just an example of the design. Now, if you recall last week, I'm using Google Chrome, and Google Chrome has a nice little feature that allows you to go click on View and then Developer and then Developer Tools right here. And if you recall, there's this little ability here where you can play around with what would this design look like on a small mobile device, or let's say on a tablet. So that's what this little option is here. It's very important to you to keep in mind the fact that individuals are going to be coming to your website from their cell phones, and you need to accommodate them. Obviously, it's kind of strange. I've heard the number that it's up to like 50% of individuals are surfing the web, that the most that with the smartphones. So that's amazing that there are so many individuals just surfing the web. And so because of that, you need to keep in mind this dynamic methodology for having the design either expand or contract. That's the liquid. So let me go back out of this mode here. So any questions thus far? Everybody good? Okay. All right, so let's come back to the original where we were asking this question of what's your general type, and now I think we're all on the same page. I think Mary just arrived. Welcome. I think was it Mary who just arrived? Welcome, Mary. We were just having a conversation about the different types of designs, and we were attempting to have everybody classify what their design was. And some people had one column fixed, others had one column fixed, centered, header, and footer, and so on. Some had a liquid, which would expand left and right. This is very tempting when you are dealing with mobile devices, or for that matter, large screens. You really have to be prepared to have your content displayed on everything from a small mobile device all the way up to large, big screen televisions even. Some people are connected to the internet and allow their TV to be a display device. So it's all part of the world of design. And we are going to go back up to where we originally were, which was discussing this particular section of the objectives of the Adobe Dreamweaver objectives. It's this section here. Domain 2.0, planning, site design, and page layout. And here, as you can see, it's a little bit out of date with the wording here. It's close, demonstrate general and Dreamweaver specific knowledge of best practices for designing a website. Maintaining consistency. Let's see how close it is. Separating content from design, using standard fonts, and using a visual hierarchy. All right, this is this week's focus. Produce website design to work equally well on various operating systems, browser versions, configurations, and devices. I'll talk to the associate dean and suggest that we update this because there's just slight differences in the wording, but it's very close. All right, I'm satisfied. I'll keep the tab open. In fact, here's the link. Oh, Christopher mentions this is the first place the second ebook is mentioned. I think you're referring to this here, ebook 1, ebook 2. Yeah, I'll have to mention that to the Associate Dean, that this reference right here. Thanks for pointing that out. She's actually in the process of updating the content to be updated for the textbook that we have. There's the link. All right, now I want to make sure that we go over the detail of for tonight's lecture on each of these concepts, just so that you're on the same page. Okay, so let's break it down here by this first objective: general knowledge of best practices for designing a website. Okay, up to this point, the things that you know thus far is how to describe your basic design. I think we all have a pretty good feel for understanding the concepts of header and footer and the one column, two column concepts, the fixed versus liquid, the value of a liquid design versus a fixed design, and so on. I think we have a basic understanding of those principles. Those would be considered best practices for designing it. The beginnings of the knowledge of the best practices for designing a website. Maintaining consistency. Now, when you create a design, in fact, Dreamweaver really helps you to do this. You can create your own design templates and use them instead of the defaulted ones that are available to us. And I'll get into that later on tonight, I expect, where I can show you how to take advantage of Dreamweaver's template capability, where it allows you to create a template of the content, and then that's how it can be consistent. You can maintain the consistency from one web page to the next. If you have a consistent header and a consistent footer, then you can just make the body area what varies from one web page to the next. And you let Dreamweaver manage the content of what's static or what doesn't change from one design to the next. We'll go over that later on, but I just want to plant that idea in your mind, the idea of using the same general design from one page to the next of your website. That's what they're talking about, consistency. Now this next concept here, separating content from design. We talked about that just briefly last week when I showed you the website, the CSS Zen Garden, separating content from design. Now, just for a little bit of review, I'll bring that back up, csszengarden.com. I'll give you the link here. This website is all about this concept right there, separating content from design. That is what this website is all about. So the groups that have defined the standards of the group that defines the standard of the internet, does anybody remember my mentioning that group last week? There's a group of, I guess they're professionals who come together as a committee, and they are basically the scientists. Yes, that's it, Ryan. That's the group that defines HTML or defines CSS, just defines the standards. Now, the reason why you need that is because you have all these companies developing technologies based upon these standards. So, for example, let's say I was a company that created a browser. What standards do you think I would need to be aware of so that my browser would work? Does anybody have any idea when I say what standards? It's kind of like a general way of saying what is it that they're defining that me as a browser creator would have to know about. Anybody have any thoughts along that line? See, that's the first click right there. Okay, here's the question. What if I'm a developer? Let's say I'm a creator of the browser. What do I need to learn about from this group? Because my browser needs to, I'm showing you the answer right here. The question is, what standards being defined by this big committee in the sky would I need to be aware of if I was developing a browser? Well, one thing I would have to know this HTML and CSS. Another thing I would need to know is JavaScript and how audio and visual is going to work. Accessibility, remember how that has to do with individuals who might be blind or have other impairments. Mobile web, privacy issues. These are standards, so this committee defines them, and we have to become aware of them. So back to where we were with CSS Zen Garden, the browser needs to know the HTML standard. It needs to know the CSS standard because it's the browser that interprets these things. And this website here, CSS Zen Garden, is all about the separation of, right here, content from design. Now, I don't expect everybody to know the answer of this next question, but which of these, I mentioned it briefly last week, which of these takes care of content and which of these takes care of design? If you don't know the answer, just put a question mark. If you're guessing, just put your answer followed by a question mark. Everybody answer. If you don't know, just put a question mark. Okay. All right, so what I'm going to do is some people have answered already, and instead of giving you the answer, what I'd like to do is help you think out the answer. That way, you'll remember it better next time. So the whole concept here of separating content from design, let me explain to you a little bit why it's valuable. I'll just go ahead and click on this link. I clicked on the link, and here in Wikipedia, and by the way, I like Wikipedia, and I don't mind using it in the classroom. I mean, as far as my lectures, frankly, I'm really not above it. It's definitely fine for me. So, separation of presentation and content. Separate content from presentation. So this back here, content from design. So the design word is another word for presentation. So this is, for example, an analogy would be content. That would be like the ingredients. How many of you have ever watched the TV shows like Chopped on the Food Channel? So they always talk about the content of what they're creating, and part of the rules of the Chopped TV special or channel or whatever you call it, that Chopped movie. Or no, it's not a movie. It's like a TV series, kind of a reality thing. Is in order for cooks to do their task, they have to include certain ingredients in their plate. And once they prepare the ingredients, then they they display the ingredients of their plate in a nice, what do they call it? They plate it, and visually it looks appealing or not. That's a little bit like in web design. The content are the words, or like the ingredients of the food. The design is the presentation of that content. The same two concepts exist for developing a web page. Now right here, you can see there's a lot of content here. If you turned off the styling, you would see something that's, in fact, I'll show you how you can do that. Here, if you click on this file here, and then click on it, and then when it comes down here, we can then double click on it, and it opens it up. As you can see here, this is like the ingredients of the food. There's no styling. There's some built-in styling that comes from your browser. It's chosen a default font for these things, and this is a certain heading size. That's kind of default behavior that's happening. But as you can see, there's no styling in addition. There's no color, no unusual font choice, and so on. This is content. Okay, so that's the content. That's kind of like the ingredients of the food. If you come back to the CSS Zen Garden and you click on this file is what gives it the styling. Now, we'll just go ahead and look at it. I think that I double-clicked on the CSS, and I think that the Dreamweaver is set to open it. If you double-click on the HTML, it's the browser that's set to open it. But if I double-click on the CSS, I think it goes right into Dreamweaver, because that's the registered application for the CSS file, which is fine. Now this looks like, just looking at it, it looks like it too is content, but you need to think about the effects of this. So this coding in here is what influences all the presentation. For example, colors and margins and letter spacing and the font that's used. All these instructions have to do with the design. As you can see, there's no content in here at all. I read through this and I have no idea what the website is about. None whatsoever, because it's got no food in it. This is just the presentation. It doesn't have anything to do with the food, if you will. Yeah, this is a good question, Sarah and Scotty. And it's part of designing a design here. So let's go back to the, here's the word. So here, we don't have any styling, but we do have all the content. So the two go together. They're actually married. They're kept separate for reasons. And then they're married together in order to achieve the final result. When I say married together, I literally mean, one hooks up to the other. And I think you remember here on this, when you click on the View All Designs, this is the marriage of the same. This is interesting. I've never thought of this analogy before, but I've been using the word marriage. And it's the same content. Each of these has the exact same. This file here is the same across each of them. So they all have the same content file, but they all have unique designs, CSS files. And those CSS files include also they have graphics also associated with them.
Hey, I've got a question, or I've got another way to describe it that might help.
Thank you.
Another way to look at it is like a building. Your HTML is on the outside, to where you have your basic brick building to where they all look the same, right? Your CSS is on the inside to where each one of them looks differently. So you go inside, you've got your decorating done differently, and each building is differently inside as far as the CSS.
Yep, that's a good
Any?
analogy.
Yeah. Your HTML basically is your basic groundwork. So all of your paragraphs, your wording, your fonts, your pictures, or not your fonts, your type, your pictures. But your CSS is what makes that font and the layout and all of that pretty. So you've got your, if you have background colors or certain font colors and certain font sizes or types, that's how you do it. HTML basically is like your outside of your building. Your CSS is the inside, to where even though they all look the same and they're cookie cutter on the outside, on the inside they're totally different.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. Now I'm going to take your same analogy and switch it up a little bit, and let's say we have a house plan, and let's say I want to choose the same house plan, but on the exterior, instead of having a aluminum siding, I would like to have brick, or instead of brick, I'd like to have stucco. Or instead of stucco, I'd like to have a log home. And so the reason why I bring this up is because the external of the house is also affected by styling. And then you walk inside the front door, and it's the exact same floor plan. It's then the next door neighbor. We both chose the same floor plan, but we decided to change up the exterior. So he painted it one color, I painted a different color. He has white stucco, and I've got red stucco, etc. The roofs are different, etc. So it's a similar analogy to what you're saying, but then I'm talking about the outside, how that can vary from one. So the graphics, and also, so the thing about graphics, it's a little bit controversial. Okay, I say controversial because the HTML could include graphics directly using HTML code, and that's using a special tag called the image tag, or IMG tag. So can an HTML file include a graphic? The answer is yes. But we're leaning, the standards are going away from that because they want so much to get to the point where graphic designers have full control over image creation through the CSS, through the modem of CSS. I don't know if that's the right word. Through CSS. So the goal is to put graphic designers who know user interface. We want to put them in charge of not only graphics, but also styling. So that's why there is, as you can see here, a reference to, this is a reference to a file. And you're finding this reference in the CSS. So they're moving the inclusion of images from the content world over to the styling world. They're trying to keep that separation, because by doing so, you can just go to the graphic designers and say, you guys have full control over the design of our website, full control, because you dictate all of the images and you create all the designs. Whereas the back-end developers who don't have the user interface experience, they'll take care of generating the HTML, and either as static pages or as dynamic pages that maybe come from a database-driven content system, like a content management system, or CMS as they call it. Examples of that would be Drupal is one of those content management systems. WordPress is another content management system where it's a database script that's generating the HTML. But the designers have their CSS, and the two get married together, because the HTML is actually referencing, and I'll show you how this is done. Hopefully I'm not losing you too much, because I don't want to lose you. But if you look at the HTML file, if you look at the source here, And remember, the way you can look at a source in a browser typically is right-click and then do View Page Source. You'll see at the very top a reference to a style sheet. That right there. Now, I don't expect you to remember this. I'm just kind of generally explaining to you how the marriage takes place. The marriage of the HTML or the content to the marriage of the design. It's all, you can either marry it inside and have the CSS be inside your code, or you can have it separate and just include a reference to it. This is actually probably the best way to do it, because then you just have to modify the one file and it impacts all HTML pages that reference it. Now, here I want to show you the alternative, which is not the best model here. Let's see, I think I'm in the other Dreamweaver. Let's see. Oh yeah, this actually opened up because when I did a double click on the CSS, it was the oops, hold on a sec. It was the 2014 and 2015 that opened up. But I want to show you very quickly, just briefly, how possibly not to do it, if you don't mind my saying. So let me show you how, quote unquote, not to do it. These automatically generate websites. Right here is the rendering. This is a marriage of both styling and content right over here in this window here. This is what the browser will render it. Over here is the code. Now, if you scroll up, you can see that the code is, instead of being included in a separate file, they've put the styling right embedded inside this same HTML file. And so it's a little bit, it's not the greatest way of doing this, because when you put it in the same HTML file, that means you're going to have to edit it, every HTML file. If you want to change the design, you're going to have to go into all of them and change them. So that's why this is the kind of like the not so great way of marrying the two. It's in my opinion, it's much more versatile if you do it this way here, which is you just have a single reference. You're marrying the two because the HTML file here is referencing this separate design file. So you're marrying content and design, but it's all done with this one line. And so we have a separate file that we would go and change the design. So, and it's okay to do that way. In fact, it's better, because if all our web pages are referencing the same design, then we just change the one file and they automatically all benefit from that. All right. Now, I got to admit, I'm really going deep, and I'm really kind of bringing up a lot of principles and concepts, and I'm trying to not lose anybody. But I always got to hesitate and stop, because by doing so, I want to make sure everybody's going along with us. So let's do this. If you don't mind me asking, on a scale of 1 to 5, how well have I done bringing you along with all this? I know it's the first time you're seeing some of this, and I'm really trying to just be general. I don't want you to worry about the nitty-gritty details of what I'm doing, but more just generally speaking. 5 means you're following me pretty much right step all along the way. A 1 means that I lost you a long time ago, and that's my responsibility to keep you with me. So, all right. Okay. Well, we're going to try to shoot for 4s, and so why don't we take a break, a 10-minute break. And during this break, if possible, Mary and Scotty, if you could just, I'd like one of you or both of you to turn on your audio if it's possible. I'd like to talk to you during the break, and just kind of ask questions and see where you're at, and see where I messed up and describing things. So let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break. Mary, are you able to turn on your audio? If it's not a possibility, that's fine. We'll just chat. Cannot. Okay. All right. Then let me switch gears here and see if Scotty can. That way maybe you can follow along. Scotty, how about you? Can you turn on your audio?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So
My main thing usually what I get lost in is the coding stuff. It doesn't make any sense to me. I took a class because when I first started this this school, and I was going through College America, and I was going for web design and development. But when I got into the classes where it was teaching us this stuff that we're doing now, it totally lost me. And so I switched to just graphic arts. And I still have the book because I asked if I could keep it, and they said I could. So of course I have to pay for it. But so I have an HTML and CSS book, and that I can reference every now and then if I have to. But it's just, I don't know, the coding language itself, it's just gets overwhelming and confusing to me sometimes.
yeah, I totally understand. All right, well, let's not think about coding for a second. And instead, let's just talk in generalities. And so in generalities, let's say I bring up a word processor here. And just in generalities, let's say I type in, this is my title. Okay, now, generally speaking, would you say that that gives you content, or does that give you styling?
I would say content because it's telling you what it is.
That's right. That is only content. Now let's do this. Now, the thing that I just did to it, did I affect the content?
Not really, but you did kind of change the style of the font a little bit by giving it a little, I don't know how to explain it other than like a little facelift, I guess.
Okay. So is that a yes or no? What I just did affected the content?
I'm going to say no because content's still the same. It still says this is my title. The only difference that it did was basically change the look of the content.
Okay. So in your opinion, what I just did not change the content, but it did change the presentation, correct?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So the difference is I use the HTML, that's the content. So you got that. And what I just did is what I used the CSS for, changing the style.
Okay.
So let me do that. Let me do that some more. Okay. Okay, the change that I just made to this document, would you say it's content or styling?
Content.
Are you sure?
I mean, basically, you're just adding more to, because the first one you have the title, and then you start in with like a sentence or paragraph. So it's, I don't know.
How sure are you? Scale of 1 to 10.
I don't know.
Give me a number.
Or
Did the thing I just do affect content, or did it change the content that you had before you, or did it change the styling of some content already there?
Change some styling.
Was that you, Mary?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. How about you, Scotty? Where have you decided? Sorry, I'm probably a little pushy, and I apologize.
I
Not sure?
yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay. Every word I type, I'm changing content. I'm adding content. All I'm doing is adding content.
Okay.
I am not changing the styling of that content at all. I'm adding content. All of these words are content.
Okay.
I haven't done anything to the styling of that content. Now, let me ask you this. Did the thing I just do change content?
Change the style of it, but the words are still the content because they didn't change the words. It just changed the style of how it looked.
Okay, so the answer to the question, did what I just do there, did it change the content? Your answer is?
No.
No.
That's correct. Did the thing I just do change the style?
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly. And that's the difference between the two things we're talking about. The words and the information, that's content. The styling of that information, that's presentation. So back to this original question that we had here in the objectives for this week, we talk about separating content from design. And this word design is another word for styling, and it's another word for presentation. And so what this concept is about is simply giving the person the ability to put content and let me right here see if I can let's see. Let's see, what I'll do is, let me do that like this. Okay, so here we have content without any styling. Here we have content plus the styling. So this is like generic, and this is styled. Now you see the difference between the two, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So that's all they're trying to do in creating a website. They want to keep the two separate. They want to see all these words, there's no special styling. That is equivalent to this part here, just words. But if you style them and put color and location and graphics and special font, all those instructions are how you influence the style. So HTML lets you put up the content, but CSS is what helps you make that content look pretty. And so the HTML is the way you put in the content of your website. Let me bring up this example here. In fact, if I just do a right click and a view source, you'll see it. All this is HTML. So the HTML allows you to just specify just the words. That's what its specialty is. Dry content. So content is the specialty of HTML, but CSS is the specialty for the codes that will make that content look pretty. And that's why, or styled and attractive. And so that's why you can look at the CSS and open that up. And these are CSS codes. Now, granted, it's coding, but it's the way to keep the two separate, because in the CSS, we're going to keep all the instructions that make it look pretty, or specify a color, or a line height, or a font type. We keep all those instructions in a separate file. And it's good that we do. The HTML itself, we keep in its own file. So we keep the two separate. And that's why one file handles the content. The other file handles the instructions to make that content look pretty. So that's why they're talking about the difference here between the separation of content from design. The content is just the words. The design is the instructions to make those words pretty. I say the word's pretty, but just styled. So now, would you say that your number is any better than it was a few minutes ago? If I said on a scale of 1 to 5 where you're at, is your number changed at all?
For me, yes.
Oh, good. How about you, Scotty?
Yeah.
A little bit?
Yep.
Okay, good. All right, well, it's time for us to get back to our regular scheduled class. We'll end our break. Does anybody have any questions before we proceed? Thank you. Thank you both. I appreciate it.
I'll be right back.
Sounds good. Yeah, if you want to take a quick break, Mary, I know I just took your break there, and I apologize for that.
That's okay.
Anybody have any additional questions for me?
Greetings, everyone. Today I'm going to be showing you new web designers out there how to be a little more efficient and work with something called wireframing. I personally am
Thank you. Well, let's just wait just a minute here. Remember this tool I was telling you about a minute ago? View, developer tools. If you click on this HTML, it really will show you. Turn that off. All the HTML, my screen isn't very big. So we're looking at the source code, the HTML source code, it's all in here. So this code handles the content. And then over here, see the styles? This is the area where you can see that the styling is over here. So this is showing us the HTML. This is showing us the CSS that's styling on the HTML. So when the two come together, they're married together. And so this 221.css, that's actually the content for this file here. In fact, if we did watch this, I'm going to look up here. And if I type in, see that 221.css, the /221? If I type in 221.css and hit enter, it gives me all the styling right there. That's all the styling. That's the contents of the CSS file. And our HTML here refers to that. And that's how it comes in. So it's a little bit advanced what I just did, but for those of you who can follow me, it's good for you. All right, so are we good on the difference between content, which is words, and design, which is pictures, color, font types, all those other instructions. The World Wide Web Consortium is trying very hard to keep these two separate, meaning we're going to use HTML to be the mechanism for providing content, and we're going to use CSS to be the mechanism for providing styling, and they keep the two separate. It's nice because that enables you to change the styling without having to worry about the underlying HTML structure. So here it says HTML and CSS. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets, are the fundamental technologies for building web pages. HTML for structure. It's another word for content. And it's kind of what Sarah was alluding to before when she said you build the structure of a house. And the CSS for style and layout. So those are the two, that's the separation. Okay, that's what they're, welcome Tanita. That's the reason we have the separation of content from design. Now, next point here, using standard fonts. Now, one of the things you need to be a little bit careful with is if you have downloaded a font onto your machine and it's a font that you really love, if you begin using your font that you've downloaded and you create a web page regarding using that font, you have to be very careful because not everybody may have that same web font. So the fonts that you use, that's why they say you need to standardize your fonts, because if you use fonts that are not being used, they're not standard built in, then the person seeing your web page won't be able to see the nice fonts because they haven't installed the fonts on your machine. The conversion is if you don't have the font on your machine, it will take the standard default. You may run into this because when you edit an HTML file that somebody's created on their website and they've chosen a font that you don't have, when you begin editing, it will say, oh, well, we don't have that font, so we're going to give you the generic font, the sans serif font. So just keep in mind that's the value of using standardized fonts. That way, standard fonts, that way everybody gets the same experience. Core fonts for the web, and this is one of those standards that, as you can see, browsers are the ones that are responsible for displaying and rendering the font. So they've attempted to standardize just so that everybody who creates a web page will have the same experience no matter what website they go to. So that's what is talking about here. Be careful about using fonts that other people might not have. That's what the standard fonts is. Next question, web safe colors. Now, web safe colors, this is a really interesting problem that you run into. Beforehand, a while ago, if you recall back in the day where last week we looked at all the different display devices, and those display devices had different resolution. Well, the technology of displays has definitely changed over the years. And whereas before, a long time ago, the displays that your website was rendered on could only render a certain subset of all the colors. And that was early on. But because of the technology, and that's why they call it web safe colors. Web safe colors means you're going to choose a color that the standard displays will be able to render. But because the technology has advanced so much, now the typical display has 24 bits of information used to specify web color. Now, you might not understand what that means, 24 bits. It used to be just 8 bits. way back when. But now there's 8 bits for one color, red, 8 bits for the green, and 8 bits for the blue. And that's how you end up generating so many. So if you do a little math, let's see if this works. 8 raised, let me see if this works, raised to the 2. 64 colors. Now we have 24 raised to the 2 power. I think that's doing a 24. Let's see, 24. Oh no, I'm doing this wrong. Let me start over. 2 raised to the 8 power used to be 256. Okay, I did the numbers in reverse. Apologize for that. So 2 means a bit that can either be a 0 or 1. You have 8 bits, so you have a total of 256 possibilities. In the olden days, you could only choose 256 colors to use in your website design. And that is because the display monitors were only carrying 8 bits of information. And 8 bits of information, each of which could have either a 0 or a 1, means there's a total of 256 colors. And that's it. So when they say web safe colors, that means you're choosing one of those 256 colors. Now, is everybody with me so far? If you're lost, or if I lost you, just put a question mark and I'll stop and then see where I lost you. So the displays in the olden days only had 8 bits of information for every pixel. 8 bits. That's 2 to the 8th, or so that's one of 256 colors. So choosing web safe colors means you're going to choose one of those 256 colors. But now it's 24 bits of information for each pixel. Now, I did 2 to the 8th before. What do you think the number is when it's 24 bits? What would be the mathematical equation for the number of colors that we can now render through these new display devices? It's actually 2. Now it's raised to the 24th. 2 raised to the 24th. Now we have 24 bits of information per pixel, and each pixel can be either a 0 or a 1. So how many total number of colors can we now render for each pixel? Each pixel can choose how many total numbers. Can you see the number there? 16,777,266 colors. So when you choose web safe colors, you now have 16 million to choose from. 277,216. So that's why this issue of having web safe colors is a little bit of a moot point now, because you don't need to restrict yourself to 256 colors, because now typically these display devices are providing 24 bits of information per pixel. And everybody knows what I mean when I say pixel, correct? A pixel is just a little dot that renders on the display. And that little dot can be of 16 million different colors, over 16 million. So this whole concept of web safe colors is now kind of a moot point. It's a little bit out of date because you've got 16 million to choose from now. So let's move on. Utilizing visual hierarchy. Visual hierarchy. This is a really interesting concept when designing a website. It's really, really, really interesting. So visual hierarchy means that you are helping the individual who's processing the information that you're presenting. Processing the information as meaning they're reading it. But your goal is to organize the content on your web page in a way that it's logical and broken down. What I mean by that is you have in largest text, the title. So this is the first thing where our eyes will come to, the largest font text. So our eyes naturally drawn here. Now, in order to help this person organize their thought process, you're going to provide headings. And this would be, for example, an H1 heading. They have 6 different headings we can choose from. And so you choose the next topic to be, next category to be an H1 heading. Then, again, to help them out, you can then have a breakdown of an H2 heading and possibly even H3 and so on. So, generally speaking, this visual hierarchy means that you're helping the person digest the information that you present to them through the usage of size of font and the organization of the content. So, both top to bottom and left to right, your goal is to refine the content. And just by putting the content in the normal text here, that's also part of the whole hierarchy, because here we have the biggest size, and then the next biggest size, and then the normal size. Here we have a medium size. So all this is talking about here, visual hierarchy, is to help them organize the content by its size. Okay, everybody with me? That's what visual hierarchy is. A hierarchy means like a organization from top to bottom. All right. Now, this next concept is quite unique. Search engine optimization. Now, this is kind of a pretty deep principle. Now, anybody have any experience with this? And if so, do you know what the acronym is? Have you had any experience with what this means and what it stands for? And what it represents, I should say. Sarah's had some experience with it. All right, that's the acronym, SEO. It stands for Search Engine Optimization. Now, you might think, well, do I really need to learn about search engine optimization? Well, one way to find out is, let's go over really quickly to a website that keeps track of jobs, and let's type in SEO, and we'll add in their HTML, pull out where I'm living, and click Find Jobs. And 58,674 jobs have both HTML and SEO. What is a SEO? Advanced Experience of SEO Concepts. Analyzing SEO campaigns. Strong knowledge of search engines, paid search, and SEO. Okay, you see it? It's all over the place. SEO. Developing SEO campaigns. See that? It's all over. So obviously this is pretty important stuff. All right, here's what it is talking about. How good are you at using words in your content and also in the metadata, I'll use that as a general word, of your content, so that website search engines will identify your content quickly, so that when you type in the search engine, let's say I'm looking for green smoothie recipes. Okay, I'm using 3 keywords: the keyword green, the keyword smoothie, and the keyword recipes. Now, when I hit enter, these websites that come out have all been discovered by Google's website indexing system. And it's doing its very best to list the websites that it thinks are most pertinent to the words I used. Now, the the higher you are in the results is the better you are in this SEO principle, meaning search engine optimization. In other words, how well can you create a website that when it's discovered by the Google search engine, it will appear towards the top? How well do you use your words? Search engine optimization. Now, I gotta admit, there are many, 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 many things that come into play as to what is going to end up creating the links here. A lot of factors. See, not only is it just the words that you use, but also how many websites out there have a link to your website. Because Google believes that if a lot of websites out there and blogs and so on have links to your website, that means you must be pretty important. So part of the search engine optimization campaign is not only to just use the right words on your web pages and the naming of your web pages and the words and the content and the metadata, but also in developing a campaign. And a campaign is related to this other concept that I was talking to you about, creating other websites or creating a system whereby other people are pointing to you, because the more people that Google thinks is pointing, more websites that are pointing to your website, the more important you are. And that in and of itself is one of the reasons why these are coming up here towards the top. They use the right words, but they also have a lot of people out there who have links to you. Okay? Is everybody with me? This is called search engine those are two principles involved in the search engine optimization. And that's why it's important just to be aware of it. It's one thing to create a website with content and with styling, but it's another thing for your website to get discovered through search engines. And those are two concepts I just gave you: the words that you use and also how popular people think your website is and link to you. So that's part of this concept, search engine optimization. When you click on it, Google, this is talking about, if you want to learn about SEO, they review your content. It's a whole thing. So that's kind of how do you get your website found? That's basically what that is all about, search engine optimization. Because people will hire you to create their website, but then they say, can you also help me get it so it's ranked up really high? And that's an art to do that. It's very competitive to figure that out. And if you just know some of the concepts, you'll do fine. All right. Next, number 2, produce website designs. Yeah, it does take time. Produce website designs that work equally well on various blank and browser versions and configurations. So I think something got swallowed up there. Let's go to the original content on Adobe. Here, and let's see, website designs that work equally well on various operating systems, browser versions, configurations, and devices. Okay, now what this concept is about is the content that you create. When you design and develop a website, you have to keep in mind that website, not only are people going to be visiting your website on different size devices like a smartphone, tablet, laptop, desktop, but also they're going to be using different browsers. Now, I'm using Google Chrome, but some of you probably use Apple Safari. Others of you might use Mozilla. Others of you may use Windows Internet Explorer. Those are all examples of different browsers. And they all are running on different types of computers, number one. So I'm running Google Chrome on a Mac, OS X, and somebody else may be running Google Chrome on Windows. Somebody else may be running Safari on their iPhone. Do you see the combination of the computer itself and then the browser and then the version of the operating system underneath? And so when testing takes place of your website, good testers will test your content on a variety of different combinations of that, just to make sure that everything looks the same across these different platforms. Oops, I selected the wrong thing. I meant to select that. Operating systems, browser versions, we talked about that. So operating systems, that's a word for like Windows and OS X and Android and Linux. That's the various operating systems. Browser versions, that's like Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, Safari. Versions and configurations, that's what they're talking about. And then the devices themselves. Now, this comes with time where you are careful to not include certain coding that will only work on certain browsers. There are websites that, let's see if I can find this browser. Let's see if I can. This is a website that's designed exactly for this. Can I Use is the name of the website. Well, what they're doing is they're giving a list of all the features, and then they'll tell you whether or not it can be used. And here's an example. This is really what this concept is all about. Meaning, if I want to do a certain thing and use a certain feature of this HTML5 or a certain aspect of CSS, how many of the browsers out there are going to make it work? This is really kind of complex, but as you can see, these are different examples of browsers across here: Internet Explorer, Edge, Firefox, Chrome, Safari, Opera, and so on. The numbers in here are the releases. In other words, the release to production of versions of that browser. The green means what you're wanting to do is supported by that particular browser. The red means no, there's no support for that, or the support stopped. By the way, 8, 9, 10, 11, this is going this way. So version 8, no support for that. Version 9, nope. But 10, yes, they supported this particular instruction. Version 11, yes. So you can see how this little mapping works. Okay, so generally speaking, all I'm trying to get across to you is this concept of working equally well in various browser versions and configurations, various operating system browser version configurations and devices. That's really what this is about. Do you use the coding that you're choosing? How many of the browsers will support that? Okay, is everybody following me? Just generally speaking, I'm just kind of generally saying you need to be a little bit careful about the cool things you do, because not every browser out there is going to, okay, good. Not every browser out there is going to be able to do it. And remember, there's a website for browser statistics, and this tells you, we looked at this last week, this is the size. Let me go up, let's see if this is the one that tells you what browsers are being used. Yeah, this is the browsers that are being used. So you look at this and say, well, 67% of the people browsing out there are using Google Chrome. So 67% of the people are using this one. And then 19.2% are using this one. So the combination of those two, so far we got 67 plus 7 is 74. Oh, no, I meant to do 67 plus 20, 19, say 20, 87. So we're already at 87% just by making testing on both of these two browsers. So we can either use these two in our testing. Then if we go to the next one, IE, Internet Explorer, we add 7% more. So we're at 67, let's say 87 plus 7% more. We're up to like, let's see, 67 plus 19. It's like 87 plus 7 would be 94. So now just with these three browsers, if we do our testing on those three, so here's IE, Firefox, and Chrome, we're hitting about 95% of all the users out there, all the people coming to our site. If we want to go a little further, we can test on the Safari one, and we catch another 4% or so, and then only about, thank you, Scotty, and then about 1.5% less. Now, so what I'm saying is, if you do most of your testing on Chrome, you're going to be pretty safe, at least with 67% of the people out there. If you then do your testing on Chrome and on Firefox, you're going to get about 87%, because you're doubling your testing time. Every time you choose an additional browser to test, you've got to go through everything again. So that everybody see how you kind of want to do your testing on the most popular browsers and then move on, rather than try to hit it on all of these just to make sure, oh yeah, we're making sure the last 1.5% of people can see this exactly right. That is what is number 2 here. Produce website designs that work equally well, and that's this functionality. So make sure you have green on the Chrome, make sure you have green on the Firefox, on whatever you choose to use. And here, there's all sorts of features and functionality, but you click on that and it'll tell you exactly. Yep. So it's a really nice little website that says what is supported out there by those particular combinations of browsers and so on. Next, number 3, demonstrate knowledge of page layout design, concepts and principles, and screen resolution. Now, last week and already somewhat today, we've talked about some of the page layout design principles of these different types here, where we did. Again, I apologize that they got rid of all these. I really like these because it's a nice way to talk about the different types of templates and design. But generally speaking, if you get the concept of columns, if you get the concept of header and footer, then that's good enough. You can then continue the conversation. So this page layout design is referring a lot to those general types of design types. We already looked at that one. Now the concepts and principles. I'm not sure I'm going to worry about what that's talking about. And the screen resolution, I think we talked a little bit about that last week. Browser statistics by display, and then this here is so this talks about what's the size of the screen that's hitting your website, and most of them are greater than this. These are in pixels. Does everybody understand what pixels mean? 1,920 pixels by 1,080. So the width by the height, and so as you can see, most of them are greater than that. So that's high resolution. So 97% of visitors have screen resolution of 1024 by 768 or higher. So that's way down here. So what they're saying is 97%, if you add all these up, have that kind of resolution. Now, the resolution is how it determines how much content you're able to put there. Because the higher resolution, the more concentrated the information is and the more content. You've probably taken one graphic, for example, and displayed it on different machines. And on the one graphic, let's say it were 1024 by 768. Well, on the one device, let's say it's a cell phone, it would take up the entire screen because that's how big the display is. But if you display that exact same graphic, which has different dimensions, 1024 by 768, on this display, it would be about half. That exact same graphic would take up about half the display. Is everybody following me on that? Higher resolution? Good. That same graphic will only take up half the screen. So that's what they're talking about here on screen resolution. And again, you need to be sensitive to that. These graphics, for example, the ones that are using CSS Zen Garden, on one screen will take up one amount, and then on a different screen, smaller screen, they would take up. So these graphics are graphics by definition have an exact size. Now HTML can get a little fancy about expanding a graphic, but you end up having distortion. When you can tell. You can even tell your CSS to expand this graphic, and you got to stretch it or you contract it. But there's always distortion. If you're ever doing any stretching or contracting of a graphic, it's not going to look right. So that's part of. So you might say, well, so what's the solution there? Well, let me show you the website of the company where I work. Sometimes we actually bring along with us different size graphics. And what we do, the web page is actually smart enough that it detects that it's running on a display device that's smaller. Watch what happens. See that? That's being stretched in HTML, those things, but it's going to pop here at a certain point. There, it popped. And that pop means we're going to switch gears to a different layout. Now, going into the, I'm sorry, I'm coughing so much. Going into the detail of how that works is outside the scope of our class, at least in our regular conversation. How that responsive design works is outside the scope because it's an advanced concept. I'm definitely willing to talk to you, any of you who are advanced and who have questions about that, but it's in later classes that we're going to learn how to do that. But I'm just letting you know it's being done here. And again, the reason it's being done is because you don't want to stretch images too much, and your design of content versus design, you want to work together well. Because this design, whenever it pops, it's switching gears to actually a different layout. Dynamically, we are dynamically choosing different layouts. And so instead of just having one single layout, there's actually possibly 4 or 5 layouts that are being jumped through. See that? Different layout. See that? All right. Now, I don't expect any of you to know how to do that. Frankly, it's very advanced. But yeah, that's right. There's like an if statement in there. And it's like an if statement that says, if your display is this, between this dimension and this dimension, this is the design I want you to do. And guess what? It's done within CSS. And so if your display is very small, then this is the design I want you to show up. In other words, this is the CSS. Remember how we talked about the separation of content and design? It works. This is why it works so well to keep the two separate, because the HTML underneath isn't changing. It's the CSS that is being called upon to vary based upon the size of the display. So it's all done in CSS. That's called responsive design. And it's become a very important concept because of smartphones and tablets, the screen sizes. That's why it's so important, because the desktop displays have become higher and higher and higher resolution, accommodating all sorts of information, but these little display devices are coming to hit our website. So you kind of like, whoa, what do we got to do? Well, it is that World Wide Web Consortium committee that's come up with this latest and greatest thing. Now, just for a minute, I'm going to tell you, this is just an advanced, a little tidbit, how it's done. Again, I apologize. This is just so you know. It's done with this instruction. Now, this is just for a teaser for all of you. You don't need to, it's outside the scope of our class today. But this is how it's done using see that? Responsive web design media queries. Responsive web design means we're going to adjust this based upon, see that? Minimum width, 480 pixels, do this rule. See that? It's a little instruction that's built right into the CSS styling. And so, in other words, instead of just having one entry here, you would have like 5 entries here for different size displays. All of them would be, you would just have this rule. And so if the rule is true, then you would use that particular styling. Else you would jump to the next one. Okay, that's just a teaser. Don't worry about understanding what I just said. I'm just kind of, for those of you who've had experience in the past, that's how it's being done. Okay? Again, don't worry. That's how it's done. And just wanted to throw that out there if any of you are that advanced that want to look further into it. Again, don't worry about it, won't be required in this course. Okay, identify basic principles of website usability. Usability is a general term, and it's a way to measure how easy it is to navigate, find the content that you want to find, navigate the website, get around the website, and essentially take advantage of the content that is there. Now, some people may say Google and their simple website. Oops, I didn't mean to go to Hotel Finder. I just meant to go to Google. Again, it's not working. Hit enter, there we go. Now, some may say, well, what's the usability of the Google homepage? Well, it's pretty simple. You just type in some words, click search, and we're off and running. So the usability of their homepage, that's it. All right, so let's talk about something we can talk about. Go Karts. And in Utah, let's say those are the things we want to do. Now, what about the usability? The usability of the website. It's no longer just the home page with a single text field to type in. Now we've got links to choose from, another input field here. We've got a navigation bar here. We've got links, pictures, And so the usability means how good is my design, the interactivity of my design, that it leads you to where you need to go. That's the concept of usability. If I click on this, it jumps into another web page, and there's interactivity here with this map. It's dynamic. All I do is stretch it down, and this updates right here. By the way, once again, a little bit of an advanced concept for you. This is, don't worry about it. This is being done with JavaScript. Now that's definitely outside the scope of what we've been talking about, because we've talked about HTML, which is content. We've talked about CSS, which is styling. But interactivity, to dynamically change your web page, that's done with something altogether different called JavaScript. And that's completely outside the scope of this class, and actually all the web classes that are offered to graphic design, web design students. The JavaScript is only for those who are in the computer programming major. If you're like a web design focus in this major, you'll take some computer programming classes over in the other department, one of which is this JavaScript. And so if you're in my class here, then you will be able to learn about JavaScript. JavaScript is a programming language that's built into the browser, and this is the way that this is being updated here is through the use of JavaScript. So it knows that I've just moved this image around, and it sends a message to the back-end scripts, which are written in whatever language, and it tells the browser, can you update this area here? See, it didn't update the entire page. It updated a little area in our design. Just by the fact that I moved this around and I let go, sent the instruction to the back-end server, which came back and told the browser, gave the browser some information to adjust this. That's all being done in JavaScript. That all has to do with usability, by the way. But, again, outside the scope of the concepts that we need to work about. How's everybody doing? Okay. So, all right, page, let's see, usability. That's what, because usability is not only just clicking on links, but it's actually also interactivity. And the interactivity is what I was experiencing here when I was moving this around. So interactivity has to do with usability as well. Again, don't worry about understanding how it's done, but it would be nice for you to begin thinking about, just don't worry about having to program it. Just at least you might want to keep in mind, hey, if I could learn to do something. Sometimes you can download things that do it for you, and you just put it into your website, so you don't need to learn how to do it. You just can take advantage of it. So readability, that refers to how easy is it for a person to digest the information that is being presented to them. And accessibility, this is how well somebody is able to, who might have impediments of some sort, able to access the content on your website. Web accessibility, there are standards here. It's typically for people with disabilities, and if you remember last week I mentioned that your web design needs to, especially if you're working for government, it's required by law to provide ability for individuals who have these impairments to address to come to your website without being affected negatively. It's kind of like putting handrails in front of a building, same concept. That's what this is about. Demonstrate knowledge of flowcharts, storyboards, and wireframes. Now, we've talked a little bit about flowcharts. Last week we had a site chart, site map, and then storyboarding. Storyboards in general is kind of like what you would see in the development of like a movie. You can storyboard the second part of our assignment where we have the different page layouts. That's kind of a storyboard. And then the wireframes, that's also the designs that we have. It's the site map, website hierarchy. Communicate with others, such as peers and clients, about design and content plans. All right, let's just jump over to here just to make sure we got it about all. Okay. All right, well, we're getting close to being done. I now want to switch gears. So now you understand some of the concepts that we're going over this week. Now I just want to go over the discussion. And then we'll start working on looking at the assignment too. Should a prototype web page convey both site design and page layout, or only page layout? So the question is, what does the word prototype mean? Prototype is like a sample. It doesn't have all the content. It doesn't have to have all the functionality. It's just a sample. So should a prototype web page convey both site design and page layout, or only page layout? So let's say we use this as a sample prototype. I'm going to switch to design mode so we don't have to worry about all the coding there. Okay, so here's a web design. A prototype would be, for example, something that has some general instructions, just links that don't necessarily work. And now with this design here, these links are part of navigation. They don't have to work in your prototype design. The content doesn't have to be your content either. How many of you have ever heard of, I always have to look it up, Ipsum Florum, I think. I should know that by heart. And fake text, yeah. Lorem ipsum, thank you, Ryan. One of these days I'll get that right. Lorem ipsum is a concept for how to use content, filler content. And filler content that allows you to put gibberish in your design. So this would be, for example, something that your prototype could have, lorem ipsum. You know if there's if it's the graphic designer is experienced, if they know that word lorem ipsum, then they've been around the block. They know what's about. So both site design and page layout are only page layout. So our design prototype web page, here we have, by looking at this, is it possible to discern what web pages are going to be? Well, this link 1, link 2, link 3, link 4, definitely this is a way for you to acknowledge the other web pages. So, so to a certain extent, the page layout lends itself to a little bit about the design of the site, and yet it hides it too. Let's click to this here. Here we have page layout. Here we have this drop down. That, by the way, is an interactive menu. It's all part of remember the interactivity. And so, but you can't really tell what the whole website's going to be like. This up in here gives you a little bit of a hint towards navigation because we're inside the education. See that education subfolder right there? We're inside the education portion of our site. We happen to be dealing with in the section Adobe certification programs. Look this right there. You can see that we're now in the certification program subfolder. And then we find a web page inside that folder. That's an HTML page. So back to the question of, are we seeing this full site? Are we just seeing like the links to the other web pages? Are they comprehensive of all? All those questions are that's really what this question is about. Any questions about the discussion question? And if you could, please remember to include, I don't know if this works. Oh, that link is gone. Please include mention of having a reference. I don't know if normally we have one reference, and yet I don't see it included here. So I may not be able to require. Oh, there it is, right there. Okay, good. Everybody should know how to create the APA formatted reference. All right, well, we're almost out of time, but let me just jump into briefly what our assignment's about. Sorry, I'm not in student view here. That would look a lot better. I'm in the teacher, and I don't want to switch to student view right now because it will take me back out, so I'll stay here. Now, the prototype is where we are beginning to use Dreamweaver to create some of our web pages in the prototype. Here we have a width of 960 pixels. And we're going to be using Dreamweaver to create these. Now, on Wednesday night, I will go into detail of how to do this. And we'll go over each of these so you can watch me as I create them. We'll first start by using W3 Schools, and then I'll show you how to do it in Dreamweaver. And hopefully by the combination of the two, I might even have time to show you how to do it just in a regular text editor, but that would be only if we had time. So come back Wednesday night, and I'll go into detail about how to create these web pages associated with your prototype design. All right. If you have any questions, please stay. We have run out of time. I'll go ahead and download I'll download the audio recording, and I'll upload that tonight. If you have any questions, feel free to stay. If not, thank you very much for coming, and we'll see you Wednesday night. Good night. Night, Ryan. Scotty, are you good? Okay, good. All right, take care, Scotty. Good night.